So today we're working on the Focus. This is a 2008 Ford Focus. It's got the 2.0 liter 4-cylinder engine in it. We're doing a valve cover gasket. Luckily, I didn't start having misfire yet. I caught it before I started having any issues with it. But yeah, common problem with these, when the valve cover starts leaking oil, it'll get down on the spark plugs and it'll cause a misfire and it'll run rough. But I noticed it because just did an oil change on it. I noticed some oil on top of the valve cover, so I caught it before I ran into any issues. But yeah, so we're gonna go through and show you how to do that. It's a pretty easy process, and go ahead and jump into it. So the tools you'll need for this job are a torque wrench that goes down to, if it's 6 foot-pounds, 13 millimeter wrench. Ratcheting is nice, but if you don't have it, it's fine. Ratchet for a 8 millimeter, so you need an 8 millimeter deep socket, and whatever size ratchet you have to fit that. Pliers just to pull off some random clips. A pick to pull out the old gasket. I use a screwdriver to get down into the spark plug holes just to clean up the oil, so you need paper towels. And a little pry bar just in case you might need a little bit of force to pop the valve cover gasket off. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So we're going to start off by disconnecting each one of your coil packs here. Just pinch that plug and disconnect those. So let's grab one of it, disconnect. Go ahead and do all that for all 4 of these. And sometimes if they do give you a hard time, it helps to push in on them, push the clip down, and then pull out. But this should come off pretty easy. After you get these coil packs disconnected, you're going to want to go through and remove the 4 8 millimeter bolts that hold your coil packs in, and go ahead and pull your coil packs out. Yeah, so as you can see here, you can see all this oil up here on top of the valve cover, so there's a pretty clear sign that this one needed replaced. It definitely starts to show up more, especially up here in Michigan when we start to get some really cold temperatures, and the heat cycles cause this thing to expand and contract, and that's what causes these valve covers to start to leak, which is, it's a super common problem on this car. It's inexpensive to fix, and it's not too big of a deal, so we'll go ahead and jump into it. So now that you got those loosened up, go ahead and pull these bolts out, put them in a safe place. These magnetic holes are very handy for this. Set those up out of the way. Go ahead and pull the coils out. You just pour it up on them. And yeah, you can see all that oil around this. That should be bone dry down in there. I'm really surprised this one didn't start misfiring yet, because I have a lot of oil down in there. But yeah, that should be bone dry down inside of there. So set these up out of the way. I'm actually gonna get a rag, set these on. These are pretty oily. So now that you got those pulled out, next thing you want to do is there's 4 wires in here. One tucked underneath here, a little harder to see, but go ahead and disconnect those. Those are your fuel injectors. Go ahead and well, there's supposed to be tabs on them to push on and pull them out, but that one's broken off, so it makes those ones a little easier. Yeah, it's gonna be a pain. I need pliers for that one. Get a needle nose down here. There we go. So I just wanted to give you guys a better shot in the injector plugs. There's one here, one here, one here, and then there's one that's tucked underneath that harness. You can see the ejector there. And we're going to unplug this also. It goes right here. Disconnect that, and then pull this rubber boot off. There's another plug underneath there. And then these plastic clips here, these just pop right off these studs here. You're going to want to take those off. There's one there, one more over there, just so we can pull this wiring harness back. Same thing with these clips here in the back. We're going to disconnect this crankcase vent tube here, and I'm pretty sure we got to take this bracket off. There should be one bolt back here holding it on. So go ahead and take care of that stuff, and should be able to pull the valve cover off. So just pop these clips off here, pop this rubber boot off. so this one, you just go ahead and pinch on that plug here and it'll pop right off. Those get super brittle because of all the heat from the manifold on the back there. So be careful because you'll probably break them like I just did. See if we can get this one off. There we go, that one popped right off. I'm gonna see what size wrench we need for this bracket back here, and I'll be right back. Alright, yeah, so that stud on the back of the motor for that bracket here is a 13 millimeter. Ratcheting wrench will be your friend back there, but not needed. If you have other tools, it'll still work. Put your bolt in the spike, won't lose it. I think the last thing I have to do is disconnect this crankcase vent hose here, and it should be good to start getting the most of the valve cover off. Let me give you guys a better shot of that clip. So for your crankcase vent hose here, it's hard to see, sorry. This little tab here, you're gonna lift this up, and then that'll open that plastic up so you can slide this thing right off. Tuck that out of the way, and we should be good to start loosening up all these bolts here that actually hold the valve cover on, and this thing should be ready to pop off. Okay, now we're good to go ahead and start pulling the 8 millimeter bolts that surround the perimeter of that valve cover. And we're going to want to use a deep well socket because they got those long studs sticking out on top of them. I'm just going to go through and buzz all those off real quick. I forgot I have this broken plastic on here. I'm going to pop this off real quick. It's super brittle. Vacuum that up later. Alright, and then after you do the ones on the perimeter, there's looks like 1, 2, I believe there's only 2 in the center that you also have to undo, so we'll go ahead and undo those real quick. 1, 2. Do not drop the bolts down in the spark plug holes. So we can pop this up now. Ugh. Might need a little pry bar. So I forgot to hit record when I started pulling the valve cover out, but yeah, after you get your bolts undone, it may take a little force to pop this thing up. Just be careful if you have any loose bolts, pull them out just so they don't pop off and go flying on you. But yeah, so this is what it looks like with the valve cover off. Basically what you do is you pop this up and you're gonna wanna pull it out this way underneath the harness. Just be careful not to get any debris inside your engine. But I'll show you down inside the spark plug hole so you can see where there shouldn't be oil. So the inside of this engine looks kind of dark. Usually when I see engines like this, I mean, this is a high mileage Focus. This has 210,000 miles on it, I think. But yeah, usually when I see engines like this, they have this dark brown color inside of them. I usually only see this when people take their car to get their oil change at like quick change places. So it's one of the benefits of doing your own oil change. You get a little better quality engine oil, and it just seems to wear a little nicer and keep your engine a little cleaner. So, but yeah, just so, you know, if you pull your engine, your valve cover, and it doesn't look all brown like this, don't be alarmed. It shouldn't look like this. But Yeah, you can see down inside this spark plug hole, that one's completely submerged in oil. There shouldn't be any oil down in here. There's a decent amount of oil in that one. This one's not too bad. This one stayed pretty dry, but yeah, that's very clearly valve cover gasket failure. I'm very surprised that this car did not have a misfire yet, but it was coming up quick if it didn't. So, yep. So we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and flip the valve cover over and clean up real quick, and I'll show you how to do the gaskets. So I just ran that through the parts washer real quick just to clean up some of the oil and stuff that was on top of it. But now you're going to go through and pull your valve cover gaskets out with a pick here. Get a hold of this one. Okay, that's just super stiff. This should be way more flexible than that. These are like hard plastic. Those definitely got some good heat cycles on them. Over here. Yeah, these are like hard plastic. They're barely, not very flexible right now. Pull this one off in the center here. And you got your big outside one. Hear how dry this thing is. It's super brittle. I could probably actually crack this thing if I wanted to. Actually, ain't too bad. Alright. And then after that, you're going to want to go through and, well, clean my hands first, but get a rag and run it along those channels where the O-ring goes in before you put your new one in. Alright, so now I've got most of that loose oil out of there. Going over for new gaskets. Let's see if we have a part number here for you. Yeah, so Velcro part number. Sorry, see if we can focus here. VS50639R1. And you're just going to go through and work these all on the same location they were. I'm going to lay this out. So this should go in this way. Yep. And just go through and work all these in. So one thing I do want to point out about this Velcro gasket is these little notches here in the valve cover gasket. So those line up with all these dowels for your bolts. So what I do is I kind of go through and push those into place first, and then I go around and work the gasket. Because like if you start in one corner and just start working this way, you'll kind of stretch the whole thing out this way and you'll end up being off location a little bit. So yeah, as you start in a corner, go through and press in by where all my bolt holes are, and then go back over the whole thing and press it all in real good. So now we'll go ahead and put the center 3 in. Okay, so after you have your valve cover with your new gaskets on and ready to go, before you install it, make sure you try to go through and get all the oil out of these areas. I usually take shop rags like this and a flathead screwdriver, stick them down in there, get around as much of the stuff as I can, and then I'm going to take the rag, shove it over the hole, and put a blowgun in there with my air compressor and try to blow any excess oil out of there, and just try to get that cleaned up as much as you can. You don't want to just crack the spark plugs and let the oil drain down in the motor, because depending on how much you have in there, if it's too much, you can actually hydrolock the motor and do a lot of damage very fast. If it's minor amounts like that and you're going to change the spark plugs, you should be okay. But like this one, the spark plugs are almost completely under oil. This one was completely under oil. That's a lot of oil to shove down into a small cylinder like that. So just try to go through and clean all that out as best you can. Go through and wipe down all your mating surfaces for your gaskets, there, and all the way around the perimeter. And okay, so now that we got all the excess oil blown out and all my mating surfaces clean, we can go ahead and put the valve cover back in there and start torquing down our bolts. Okay, so I just went through and ran them all down with this, basically just until they touch. Make sure when you tighten these down, you go in a cross pattern to try to get a level load across this whole thing. You start on this end and work your way down. You just won't end up leaving pressure across the whole thing. Make sure you don't forget right your center too. And then we go through and torque all these down. We'll go through and start, cross pattern and tighten all these 8mm bolts down to 6 foot-pounds. So I'm not sure how noticeable it was on the video, but after you go through and do your torque on all these in a crisscross pattern, just make sure to go around the whole outside and don't forget your 2 centers and just double check your torques on everything. And then after you do that, you can go through and start reassembling everything you took off, put your coils back in, plug in all your injectors and everything, and that should pretty much wrap everything up. So I'll go through it real quick and that'll wrap up this job. I'm pretty much just going to go in reverse order of how I took it apart. Put this bracket on here in the back first. Get it started by hand. There we go. Grab that up real quick, 13mm wrench. Plug this back in, clean this off a little bit. Push that plug back in, make sure you hear it click. Push rubber boot back on. Make sure that seals in there nice. Go. Push all these plastic clips back on. I have one left because I broke the other one. Don't forget your crankcase vent hose here. That'll just push right on and clip itself, just like that. Plug this sensor back in here. Go ahead and plug your fuel injectors back in. Plastic clips back on for the wiring harness. One more down here. Let's clip back in. Alright, now the last thing I should have to do is put the coil packs in, plug those in, and this job should be wrapped up. Should be ready to fire back up. Okay, so I'm putting the coil packs back in. Make sure if yours did have oil that leaked down in there that you go through and clean off the coil packs before you put them back in the best you can. I already did that off camera, so these are good to get pushed back in. Just give them a little wiggle and twist down there. Get them nice and flush where the bolt goes in. Grab your 8mm bolts, get those started. Run these down to the touch real quick. And then we'll look up torque spec real quick and torque those down, plug them in, ready to go. So I didn't see a torque spec for this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and torque them down to 6 foot-pounds, just like we did all these other 8mm. Should be more than enough. I mean, probably don't even have to torque these, just run them down until they're good and tight, by hand obviously, and you should be good to go. Those are good. Go ahead and plug all your coil packs back in. Plug broke. There it goes. Okay, clipped back in. All right, and should be ready to fire it up. Just go through and double check everything. Make sure you have all your harnesses reconnected, fuel injectors plugged in, coil packs plugged in. Don't forget your sensor here to plug in, crankcase vent. Just do a quick look over everything. Make sure you don't have any tools laying in your engine bay, and that should wrap it up. All right, so it's time to fire it up. Just one note. If you did change your spark plugs when you did all this, don't be afraid of a little bit of smoke when you first fire the car up, because even if you cleaned out most of the oil you could, I'm sure you still got a couple drips down the cylinder, so you might have a little bit of smoke at startup, but it should clear up right away. If it's something that continues for a while, shut the car back off, and you might have to take all this back apart, and you might have missed something. But let's see, moment of truth. Move my tools off real quick. Purrs like a kitten. And one last thing I should mention, if you were having this problem where your valve cover gasket goes bad and it's leaking oil, make sure to check your oil before you continue on driving the car. I know it doesn't seem like much leaks down in there, but it can use it up pretty quick, and you don't want to run your car low on oil and end up costing you a motor. So make sure after you do this job, double check your oil level. If it's low, top it off, or do an oil change at the same time, and you'll be ready to go. So there you have it, guys. There's a little DIY video on how to do a valve cover gasket on a 2008 Ford Focus. It's a pretty simple job. If you have if you're pretty good with your hands, good mechanical knowledge, it's a pretty easy task, pretty inexpensive. I think that valve cover gasket was like, the set was like 15 bucks or something. So yeah, I mean, the only other cost would be is if you know, doing oil change and spark plugs at the same time, but just normal maintenance stuff. So pretty cheap, easy, inexpensive fix. Hope you guys learned something. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.